Mic test.
All right, well, thanks to WPS for putting on this event. My job as moderator is pretty straightforward because we have three very esteemed practitioners here on stage. So I'll try to keep my opening remarks brief, go through a couple of questions here, and then we'll open it up. So be thinking about questions towards the session as well. So we've already heard quite an extensive array of discussions at the outset, including from Secretary Anyo about the state of the so-called rules-based international order, the maritime order more specifically, as well as some of the global, regional, and bilateral challenges that we're seeing in the region. So I guess maybe I'll just go ahead and kick it off, and we can go down through the line here with the first question, which is, what is the state of the current international maritime order and rules-based order in each of your views and perspectives? And if you could talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you see, but also some of the opportunities that lie ahead. And we can start with you, Admiral Gavan.
Thank you very much, Dr. How should I call you? Prasad? Yeah. And to my fellow panelists. We failed to have our dessert, but we'll have it later. So where are we now in terms of the rules-based order? I think we're still okay. The rest of the civilized world has been resilient to the shocks created by a few countries. Those who challenge the international law-based order that we are trying to keep. But of course, it's not a walk in the park. We just have to remain steadfast. In the Philippines, we have this way of managing it. We want to remain chill, but we believe that we will prevail. After all, the international law-based order or the rules-based order provides us the opportunity to avail of the best leveler amongst us in the international relations, in the relations among countries, big or small. We only have the law to keep us on our ground, to keep us okay. And so we should keep it. And otherwise, we will go back to the time where might is right. And it is to the disadvantage of ASEAN countries, basically. Because the power, the strength of ASEAN rests on ASEAN centrality, but coming up with consensus on going towards the same way together is very hard to achieve. But even without ASEAN consensus, if we stick to the law, if we keep it rules-based, I think the world will be okay.
So, Ambassador Tugio, going off of that point, I mean, Indonesia, in addition to the fact that we have a new government in Indonesia, relatively new, under President Prabowo Subianto, Indonesia has played a very leading role on some of the regional initiatives within ASEAN as well. The ASEAN Outlook on the Indo-Pacific, the ASEAN Maritime Outlook, for example. How, in your view, should Indonesia, and how does Indonesia think about balancing the bilateral initiatives and initiatives that it has of its own with the regional and the global aspects of that?
Well, let me first thanks the WPS for the invitation for me to join these events. And I think before I address those issues, I'd like to add one thing from Admiral Gavan. When we are talking about rules-based international order, I think we should change the notions, not rules-based order, because if we're talking about rules-based order, it will depend on who rules the world. So I think we should get accustomed to the notions of international laws-based order. without mentioning that, then we're afraid that, once again, that your statement that might create rules that might be implications of those notions. Now, in terms of the Indonesian position, I think we look at the importance of the issue for Indonesian side, and I think the Secretary, Excellency Eduardo Año, already mentions three important aspects from the Philippine views, which actually mirroring Indonesian views also for the environmental issues. I think now the oceans also facing stress from the environmental impact, the maritime safety. Look at, for instance, the choke points on the Strait Malacca and Strait Singapore on the way to, I just saw the picture how crowded the area of Strait Malacca and Strait Singapore on the way to Manila. So for us, maritime safety is very important, and we work together closely with Malaysia and Singapore through trilateral mechanisms, and also through Japan and other user countries through cooperative mechanisms to ensure the safety of navigations. Because the global trade, you look at the global trade, more than 70% use, sea lane and communications. And the environmental aspect is also one of the important aspects, because I think now climate change certainly impact the situations in the region. So we want also to address this issue. The third aspect, which is also very important, maritime security. So I think this is also one of the issues which is very important, because once again, it is related with safety of navigations and freedom of navigation. While we realize that UNCLOS provide a framework for cooperations around the globe in managing and conserving the ocean's resources and utilize the ocean as a sea lane communications, we are mindful also of the fact that there are some gaps in terms of the implementations of the law of the sea. So this is one of the area whereby, for instance, now on the biodiversity, we are glad that we just adopt the biodiversity conventions. But I think beyond that, in terms of in terms of the power projection, this is something that we need to look at the UNCLOS once again, and the interplay between UNCLOS and other laws which govern different situations. So I think this is something also that we think is very important for us. And, Indonesia also wants to use every opportunity once again to provide avenue for dialogue, because dialogue is very important. It's part of the contributions to the transparencies, having a dialogue, dialogues between ASEAN and partner. And with that, then, specifically on the maritime security issues, we have the ASEAN mechanisms, a lot of ASEAN mechanisms, which comprises of the ASEAN Maritime Security Forum and extended ASEAN Maritime Forum, in addition to the IDMM for the military and IDMM Plus. So those provide avenues for ASEAN's member countries and other dialogue partners to discuss issues of shared concerns on the maritime security issue. The challenge, certainly, how to implement some of those consensus that we already reached. Because in the end, we are talking about people on the grounds, the Navy, for instance, the Coast Guard, for instance. They need to abide by some kind of the agreed rule of procedure to avoid misunderstanding, to avoid miscalculations on the grounds, which lead to some things that certainly we want to avoid.
Thanks. And Deputy Director General Hamza, we were chatting a little bit earlier about some of the challenges, but also opportunities that Malaysia is looking at as the chairman of ASEAN this year. And with the summit coming up, and then also deliberations going on till the end of this year as well. I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit to, as Malaysia looks at the region, looks at the maritime order, how does Malaysia see the relationships, not just among maritime nations regionally and globally, but also as neighbors among each other? in this very interconnected region in Southeast Asia?
Thank you. Very good questions. Now I really understand why there's no free dinner, especially for the panelists, because let our colleagues mentioned earlier, most of our members of ASEAN, all the members of ASEAN, is the state party, the UNCLOS. And of course, the basic principle is that any activities, any actions, it must be in the maritime zone. So if all the ASEAN member states, we can share together how to resolve our maritime boundaries first. It's not only in the South China Sea, in the other parts of in our region, because in our ASEAN, we have Strait of Malacca, we have Singapore Strait, we have Sulu Strait, we have Gulf of Thailand, we have Celebes Strait, we have whatever seas around us. So for Malaysia, there will be initiative. And for information, this year we have organized the first ASEAN National Security Advisor meeting to discuss among ASEAN all the current security challenges, and perhaps during the chairmanship of Philippines next year, we're going to focus on certain issues, and especially on maritime. Of course, in ASEAN also there are different interpretations on the UNCLOS. So this is where we have to put together, in terms of ASEAN, how to really understand the maritime provisions under the UNCLOS. For Malaysia, in the South China Sea, we still have a dispute area, EEZ with Vietnam, Philippines, and Brunei. We have settled through our line 2009. And of course, I think there are our main principle to make sure that peace and security in this region. And we need cooperation from all, from the non-user states and also from other regions. So hopefully during our chairmanship in ASEAN, there will be a progress in the COC and also on the Maritime Law Enforcement Agency forums. The rest, we have to work together. Thank you.
Great, thank you for that. I'm conscious of the time. I wanted to go through one more sort of quick round here and ask you, sort of looking ahead. I mean, obviously we're going to be deliberating over the course of the next few days about some of these major issues, whether it's looking at undersea cables, fisheries, specific topics. If you were looking ahead to the next year, we've already referenced some of the events. Secretary Anyo mentioned the anniversary next year, the 10th anniversary of the arbitral tribunal ruling, the Philippines against China. We've got negotiations going on the code of conduct. They've been going on for a long time, but still the process continues there. So lots of things to look forward to in the next year. What is one thing or one agenda item that you think we should be aiming to look at in the maritime domain, looking at within the next year out to 2026? What would you say is that one area that we need to focus on? Because I think, as all of you have pointed out to different degrees, the maritime agenda regionally is quite crowded. We have a lot of issues, lots of different actors. But if you were to focus on one key priority item within the next year, what would that be? Admiral Gawan.
Yeah, I'll go back to the first question, the international law-based order. And I think in the next year's round, we should focus on activities that will encourage all ASEAN member states to be more transparent on how the international law, including UNCLOS, should be applied in our region. Because if we're able to have a more even interpretation of that law, I think we can achieve the desired order that is most beneficial for all of us.
Ambassador Tugin?
Yes, I think if you ask me those questions, I think the issues of having clarities on the implementations of UNCLOS, on the issues of freedom of navigations, the issues of the safety of navigations, those are, because those interrelated, so that's some things that become one of the priority for next year. And I think we also should, seize the momentum of the commemorations of 50 years of the TAC, Treaty of Amity and Cooperation, which will take place next year, and the Philippines will assume, chairmanship of ASEAN. So I think that will be a good opportunity also, because if you look at once again, the UNCLOS provide settlement dispute mechanism, peaceful dispute mechanism. Dispute is normal. I mean, you might argue with different neighbors, but they must be resolved peacefully, and there are a lot of mechanisms available, not only in UNCLOS but also in other tribunal mechanisms. And for instance, Indonesia and Malaysia, we have dispute also in the past on Sipar dan Ligitan, but we agreed to resolve this issue through adjudication process through the ICJ. Malaysia and Singapore also, they have dispute on Petra Branca. They agreed to resolve this issue through the mechanisms, adjudication mechanisms. So I think if you look at once again the TAC, one of the mechanisms actually available in the TACs, and once again, the good part of the TAC, because there's a lot of outside partner who already acceded to the TAC. So look at the TAC again and see how we would be able to implement, the mechanism, dispute mechanism settlements, which might once again strengthening the settlement dispute mechanism, the existing one, be it in the UNCLOS or other adjudicational mechanisms. Thank you.
Deputy Director General, Hamza.
Yeah, thank you. I would like to respond in two ways. The first one is on the old proverbs. Good friends make a good neighbor. So I think we have to try our level best to resolve boundary areas within ASEAN first. In South China Sea, because we have to solve among us, then we can solve to another non-ASEAN. That's the first thing. The second one is I'd like to share a rock song. It's Living Under the Same Sun by the Scorpion. But I'm not going to sing that song today. But Scorpion said, we are living under the same sun. We are dreaming the same dream. So our people, our users want the same thing, peace, dignity, and opportunity. So what is very important is maritime transparency. Help us to get there, not through a naive hope, but through a pragmatic operation. So this is, I think, one area that we have to focus to make sure that all the claimant state, the sea users are in the same mood to avoid a conflict at the ground. That's very important. Yeah.
Thank you. And I see we only have a couple of minutes left. I could go on with many questions, but I want to open it up to see if we have any questions from the floor. I guess we can take them quickly in a group and then go back. I see one over here and then one over there, two on that table. So let's do those three, and then we'll come back and then do a quick round here of responses. And please state your affiliation, ask a brief question, and try to direct it to one member of the panel if possible, just so that we can get all three and make sure we do that. Thank you.
Flowing out from that spirit. The question is, to what extent are you optimistic that we have a code of conduct at the end of this year?
And let's have the two other questions over there at that table as well, and then we'll come back and do quick responses. And I see, Jay, you had a question as well, so let's do that.
metropolitan cities. So when you hear from the keynote speakers and previous panels, I hear the idea of resolving the disputes between among ASEAN members first. So I wonder whether it's a consensus already or just a few countries having conversations.
I think we had a question from Jay. Is that right? If we could just take that one real quick, and then we'll come back. We'll just do quick 30-second to 1-minute responses, and then we can close.
Thank you for very excellent speakers. My question is for the Malaysian and Indonesian speakers. We know for a fact that for almost 2 years already, the Philippine government has led transparency initiative in exposing Chinese aggressive actions in the West Philippine Sea. My question is for Indonesia and Malaysia. Will there be a possibility that both governments will also follow the same path that the Philippines is doing in exposing Chinese aggression? And if not, why? Thank you.
Great. So let's just go down the line with 4 topics. One is odds of the COC being concluded by next year. Second one on relevance amid might makes right. Consensus, the extent to which it exists. And then the fourth and last one, the potential for transparency initiatives that the Philippines has undertaken for other countries in the region. So let's go down the line. And Admiral Gaban, to start.
Thank you. Whether or not we should be optimistic about the DOC, my personal opinion, I think with the way it is going, maybe not. But we have hope if we are to take practical steps in coming up with protocols, at least amongst Coast Guards, just to prevent missteps that can lead to more complications at sea. And we have several platforms through which we can develop a pseudo code or a mini code amongst us. And efforts are underway. Through the ASEAN Coast Guard Forum, we are trying to formulate the common protocol on engagement at sea for Coast Guards and enforcement agency. So while waiting for the DOC to be realized, we should do something. We shouldn't wait for something whose existence is contingent to a consensus that will be very, very hard to come. On the second question, whether the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation is still relevant, we should believe that it should still be relevant. The state of affairs in ASEAN will remain contingent to our mindset. The Treaty of Amity and Cooperation trains us to aspire to be friends and to cooperate. It should remain within our mindset. It should remain relevant. That's the third question.
The third question was on consensus and the extent to which it exists on questions like rules-based order, maritime order, and so on, among Southeast Asia.
Well, if you are to survey the accession of countries to the different instruments, international legal instruments, I think there is a good indication that ASEAN countries are for the observance of international law and the international maritime conventions attached to it or contingent to it. But as to the translation of that aspiration to a vote, I think it's a different story. We know how other countries behave in the ASEAN platform. Of course, there are several factors that I'm sure all of us are familiar with. The reason why coming up with an ASEAN consensus in the persecution of an international law-based order is a difficult path to take. It's a reality. However, for us to maintain or for us to achieve an acceptable state of affairs in the ASEAN seas at least, I think we need not move as a total collective of ASEAN countries. Minilaterals can supplant. I think there is hope there, at this time at least.
Thank you. Ambassador Tugel?
Yes, I think, do we need, as ASEANs, do we need to take sides among the referees or power projections for different, from different sides? I think I made a reference to the TACs because TAC is a lot of dialogue partner for ASEANs also acceded to these, the US, UK, Australia, I mean, including China, Japan, all are also acceded to the TACs. Meaning we don't take sides because those actually platform for us to expand collaborations, cooperations with different countries because it is important for us to have a prosperity, first stability, regional stability, because with the regional stability is that it allow us to build our economy, social economic development in ASEAN's member state. In this regard, I think the TAC continue to be relevant. What need to be done, while we make reflections, while we commemorating 50 years of anniversary of the TAC, look at once again the area whereby we still see the room for further implementation, further developments of the IC for the TAC. Now on the settlement dispute, and the second question on the settlement dispute mechanism, I think ASEAN certainly, consensus is one of the base fundamental principles of the ASEAN. But when we have some issues like border, I think it's maritime border issue, for instance, we negotiate bilaterally because for Indonesia, for instance, we are surrounded by 10 different neighbors. So we have to approach differently bilaterally, to have negotiations with our neighbor. And it may take time. Sometimes negotiation on maritime boundaries also a test for the endurance. I follow, for instance, the negotiations with Vietnam. It took more than 20 years on the continental south boundary. I was very junior when I joined the Ministers of Foreign Affairs when, my job actually bringing the map during the negotiations. Well, the senior, they negotiate what would be the line that would be acceptable for both sides. It took more than 20 years to complete the negotiations, but it paid off because with that, then we now have a certainty in terms of the, the right and obligations of both Indonesia and Vietnam. With Malaysia also, we have, and lastly, not to forget also with the Philippines. Very interestingly, because Philippines, when we first negotiate with the Philippines also used the treaty box. Treaty box, 18 something. Treaty of Paris, based on the Treaty of Paris. We said to them, you cannot apply treaty box because it is against international law. It is against the UNCLOS. Otherwise, Spain and Portugal, they may claim using a Tordesillas, why not divide the world into their possessions, respectively? And we managed. It also took a long way to complete negotiations on the EEZ in the Sulu, South Sulawesi, which we completed, I think, on with the Philippines 2014. After long, so this is effort by the ASEAN member countries, whereby when we have some issues on the border, to avoid, once again, to avoid misunderstandings on the ground, to avoid the miscalculations among the Coast Guard officers, because they also have a duty to enforce the law. So to avoid these kind of situations, we agreed to resolve through bilateral negotiations. Now, I think with that, then certainly it should goes to bilaterals. And if there are some area whereby we need to discuss with different countries, for instance, there are three junctions element, then certainly we have to include also other countries. Now, the third questions on the China's aggressions on the South China Sea. I think the themes of today's conference is very important. The transparency at sea is very important. And I think we should not also forget that the ASEAN mechanisms also through dialogue, the ADMM plus the ASEAN Maritime Forum extended, whereby this provide avenue for us to once again to look at the issues that we are facing. And I think nowadays we have to utilize the technology, because nowadays the eye system, for instance, we can use the eye systems also to make some detections, for instance, to look at how other countries behave in terms of their management of the sea. Because I think this is one of the challenges for us in terms of interpretations of freedoms of navigations. Many countries, some countries may have different interpretations on the freedom of navigation. Many countries also, or some countries have different interpretations also in the implementation of the UNCLOS. And I think one of the key elements when we look at the South China Sea, for instance, we should not forget that according to the UNCLOS, this is semi-enclosed sea. Semi-enclosed sea. And based on the Article 122 and 123, there is obligation for the countries surrounding by the semi-enclosed seas to have cooperations, not only for the managements, but also for the conservations.
Thank you. And Deputy Director General Hamza?
On COC, we are very positive on that. If I'm not mistaken, there's a third or fourth reading of the draft. And of course, whatever good thing, sometimes it will take time. But meantime, we have to avoid collision at ground, especially in the South China Sea. So this is where I think one of the forums is the Maritime Law Enforcement Agency Forum between ASEAN and China. Of course, what is most important is to build trust first. Once you have a trust, it's not one-day trust. It can take 1 or 2 years, and then we can have a confident buildings, and perhaps we can have the incident at sea agreement. How everybody understand why they're maneuvering in that area to avoid misunderstanding. On TAC, of course, is still relevant. And of course, in terms of dispute, I also like to echo our colleague from Indonesia. When we had the Continental Shelf Agreement with Indonesia, from my reading to our old documents, it only took 2 weeks. But now, because of there are many interpretations of the UNCLOS, perhaps our think tank on the maritime law, we can sit together. What are the interpretation on EEZ? Of course, in ASEAN, there are archipelagic states, there are non-archipelagic states. To me, and Malaysia, I would like to consider Malaysia as a semi-archipelagic state because we are surrounded by seas, except land border with Thailand. But that's the interpretation. So to resolve the dispute, of course, there are many ways under the UNCLOS, and what is most important is negotiation and cooperation. If you want to go to third party, there's a no win-win situation. So I think the rest, I hope during the maritime security issues, we not only discuss on the disputed area, but also from Malaysia experience, there are also encroachment in non-disputed area. Near our shore, fishermen, IIU. So this is another area we should discuss together. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And please join me in thanking our wonderful panel.
Thank you to our esteemed speakers and our moderators, sirs. Once again, let's give them a round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our formal portion of our opening dinner. So we hope this evening's discussion have sparked new insights and strengthened our shared commitment to maritime cooperation and transparency. Please enjoy the rest of the evening, and we look forward to welcoming you tomorrow's session. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, good evening.